Milan sparkled that Christmas Eve. The streets glowed gold and silver, shop windows overflowing with red ribbons and lights that danced on the cobblestones. Laughter echoed from cafes, the smell of roasted chestnuts floated through the air, and for most of the city, life felt perfect. But not for everyone. On the corner of Via Dante, under a flickering street lamp sat a small boy. His name was Jamie, 10 years old. Wrapped in a coat 2 sizes too big, its fabric torn at the sleeves, his hands trembling inside thin gloves that had lost their warmth hours ago. In front of him lay a single folded piece of paper, a letter to Santa, written on old notebook paper, smudged by the cold. He'd been waiting for hours, watching families rush past, holding gifts and warm drinks, his eyes following every child who laughed, every father who carried his kid on his shoulders. He whispered softly to himself, maybe Santa just got lost. Every few minutes, he looked up at the toy store across the street, its lights still glowing, its window filled with shiny red trucks, teddy bears, and colorful trains. He pressed his small hand to the glass earlier that evening, tracing one toy with his finger, a tiny red race car. It wasn't expensive, but for Jamie it was everything. The clock tower nearby struck 8. No one had come. He sighed and pulled his knees closer. The cold cut through him like glass. Then, across the street, a sleek black car rolled to a stop. Inside that car sat Miles Romano. At just 29, he was one of Milan's youngest billionaires. The newspapers called him the genius investor with a frozen heart. They said he cared more about numbers than people. He'd built his empire on precision, power, and distance. That night, Miles wasn't thinking about Christmas. He was thinking about the deal he'd just closed, one that would make him even richer. He had everything a man could dream of, a penthouse overlooking the Duomo, luxury cars, and fame. But happiness? That was something he hadn't felt in years. He leaned back in his seat, staring out the tinted window, trying to drown out the sound of holiday music playing faintly on the car radio. And that's when he saw him. The small boy sitting alone on the cold stone bench, staring at a toy store window with eyes full of hope and heartbreak. Miles frowned. "What is that kid doing out here alone?" His driver glanced out. "Probably waiting for someone, sir." Happens a lot around Christmas, but Miles couldn't look away. There was something about the boy, the stillness, the way he held that piece of paper, the quiet way he waited as if he still believed something good could happen. "Pull over," Miles said suddenly. The driver hesitated. "Sir, it's freezing." I said, "Stop the car." The brakes hissed against the cobblestones. Miles stepped out into the cold, the wind biting through his tailored coat. For a moment he just watched, the city lights reflecting in the boy's tired eyes. Then he walked closer. Jamie looked up, startled. He wasn't used to anyone stopping for him, especially not someone like this man. Tall, dressed in a black cashmere coat, shoes polished, posture straight. Everything about him screamed wealth and power. "Hey, kid," Miles said, his voice calm but curious. "What are you doing here all by yourself?" Jamie blinked. "I'm waiting. Waiting for who?" He hesitated. "Santa," Miles almost laughed, but the boy's face, innocent and serious, stopped him. "Santa, huh? And do you think he's coming here? To Via Dante?" Jamie nodded, clutching his paper tighter. "He forgot last year, but I thought, maybe if I waited he'd come this time." Something inside Miles cracked, a feeling he hadn't recognized in years. He glanced at the boy's thin gloves, the dirt on his shoes, the way he tried to smile even as his lips trembled from the cold. "You've been sitting here long?" "Since after sunset," Miles looked around. "Where's your mom or dad?" "She's working," Jamie said quietly. "She said she'd come when her shift ends. I just wanted to see the lights while I wait." Miles exhaled slowly, trying to ignore the sting in his chest. He should have walked away. He had a party to attend, people waiting, but he couldn't. "What's that in your hand?" Jamie held up the paper shyly. "My letter." Miles crouched down beside him. "Can I see?" Jamie hesitated, then nodded. Miles unfolded it carefully, the handwriting uneven, the ink slightly smeared. "Dear Santa, I don't need much. Just something for Mom so she smiles again. She's been really sad. And maybe one toy, so I can show her we're still lucky." Miles stared at the words. His throat tightened. He looked back at Jamie. "What's your name, kid?" "Jamie." "Well, Jamie," he said softly, "what if Santa's a little busy this year?" Jamie shrugged. "That's okay. Maybe he just needs help." Miles smiled faintly. "Maybe he does." As the wind howled through the alley, Miles pulled off his gloves and tucked them into the boy's lap. "They're too big," Jamie whispered. "That's fine," Miles said. "You'll grow into them." Then, from the corner of his eye, Miles saw the toy store owner inside closing up, turning off lights one by one. He stood up. "Stay right here, okay?" Jamie looked confused. "Where are you going?" Miles just smiled. "To help Santa." The next few minutes felt like something out of a dream. Miles knocked on the toy store door, his breath fogging the glass. The old shopkeeper frowned as he opened it slightly. "We're closed." "I'll make it worth your time," Miles said, pulling out his wallet. "I need one of those red race cars in the window. And maybe everything that could make a kid's Christmas magical." The shopkeeper blinked. "Everything?" "Everything." 10 minutes later, Miles walked out holding a large paper bag filled with toys, books, and warm gloves. He crossed the street back to the bench, where Jamie still sat, hugging his knees, trying to stay awake. Miles set the bag down beside him. Looks like Santa didn't forget after all. Jamie's eyes widened as he peered inside, disbelief flooding his small face. Is this for me?" Miles nodded. "You and your mom." The boy froze. His lips trembled. He didn't say thank you right away. He just stared, silent tears rolling down his cheeks. Miles sat beside him quietly. "It's okay, Jamie," he said gently. "Sometimes Santa needs help finding the right house." Jamie looked up at him. "Are you his helper?" Miles smiled faintly. "Something like that." Minutes passed. They sat together, watching snow begin to fall over Milan. The streetlights turned the flakes golden as they drifted down. For the first time in years, Miles felt something strange. Warmth. Real warmth. The kind that doesn't come from money or success. Jamie yawned. His small head leaned against Miles's arm. "You should get home, Jamie," Miles said softly. "Your mom will be worried." "She'll be happy," Jamie murmured sleepily. "Santa came after all," Miles smiled. "Yeah, he did." He waited until the boy's mother, a tired woman with soft eyes and messy hair, appeared at the end of the street, rushing toward them. When she saw the toys, her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God. Jamie, what is all this?" Jamie pointed at Miles. "Santa's helper brought it." She turned to Miles, eyes wide with shock. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Miles interrupted softly. "Just take care of him. He's a special kid." Before she could reply, Miles slipped into his car, closing the door quietly as the snow fell heavier around them. As the car drove away, he glanced in the mirror one last time. The image of the boy waving through the snow burned into his memory. For some reason, he didn't feel like the richest man in Milan anymore. He felt like something far better, human. Snow blanketed Milan overnight. By morning, the city had turned white, quiet, peaceful, almost sacred. But inside the glass penthouse overlooking the Duomo, Miles Romano couldn't sleep. He stood by the window, watching the city fade into a blur of snowflakes and car lights below, coffee gone cold in his hand, sleepless eyes fixed on nothing. That little boy, Jamie, had stayed in his mind all night. The small hands holding that crumpled letter. The way his eyes lit up when he opened the bag. The way he whispered, "Santa came after all." It was supposed to be just a moment, a random act of kindness. But something about it wouldn't leave him alone. For years, Miles had lived by one rule: don't get attached. Business was clean, efficient, emotionless. People were unpredictable. They slowed you down. Yet somehow, that little boy's smile had shattered that rule in seconds. He walked over to his desk, sleek black marble, spotless, except for one thing, a tiny red toy car, Jamie's red race car. He'd bought 2 that night, one for the boy, one for himself without even realizing why. Now it sat there, mocking him gently. He picked it up, turned it over in his hand, and for the first time in years, Miles smiled. Not the kind of smile he wore for investors or headlines, but something softer, real. Then his phone buzzed. Assistant on speaker. "Good morning? Mr. Romano, your flight to Zurich's been confirmed for the 26th. You have a board meeting in 2 hours. Then lunch with the mayor at—" "Cancel everything," Miles said suddenly. A pause. "Sir?" I said, "Cancel it." "All of it, but—" "The mayor. Tell him Santa needed help," Miles said, a hint of sarcasm masking sincerity. "I'm taking the day off." Silence. Then a reluctant, "Understood, sir." Miles hung up and stared out the window again. He didn't know what he was doing. All he knew was, for the first time, business could wait. That afternoon he stepped out into the snow-covered streets of Milan. No driver. No assistant, just Miles, hands in his coat pockets, walking like a stranger in his own city. He retraced his steps from last night. Down Via Dante, past the glowing shop windows, past the bench where he'd met Jamie. The spot was empty now. But near the bench, on the ground, he spotted something small, a piece of paper soaked from the snow. He picked it up carefully. It was the back of Jamie's letter, faint pencil marks on the other side. "P.S. Santa, if you see my mom, tell her not to worry. I'll help her when I grow up." Miles swallowed hard. He felt that old familiar tightness in his chest again. He folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket. Something deep inside told him this wasn't over. Later that evening, he asked his driver, "Do you remember that woman last night? The one who came for the boy?" "Yes, sir. Can you find out where she works?" The driver hesitated. "I think she was wearing a waitress uniform. Maybe from one of the cafes around the piazza." Miles nodded. "Then start there." By sunset, he found her. A small corner cafe, tucked between boutiques on Corso Magenta. Inside, the scent of espresso and cinnamon filled the air. Through the frosted glass, Miles saw her, Jamie's mother, wearing a faded blue apron, hair tied up, serving customers with a tired but warm smile. He waited until the rush cleared, then stepped inside. The bell over the door chimed softly. She looked up. Her eyes widened instantly. "Sir," she began. Miles raised a hand. "You don't have to thank me," she shook her head. I didn't even know who you were last night. I didn't even say thank you properly." "It's fine," he said quietly. "Is Jamie here?" Her smile faltered. "He's at home." He caught a little cold after waiting out in the snow. Miles' expression softened. "I'm sorry to hear that. I should have made sure he got home sooner." "No," she said. "You already did more than anyone ever has." She hesitated, then added softly, "We didn't even have heat last night." The toys, they made him forget how cold it was. Miles looked down, then met her eyes again. "What's your name?" "Lena," she said. "Lena Ferraro," he nodded. "Well, Lena, I was wondering if there's anything you need." "Anything at all," she frowned slightly. "Why would you want to help us more?" "You've already done enough." Miles hesitated, searching for an answer that didn't sound strange or too honest. "Because your son reminded me what Christmas is supposed to feel like." Lena smiled faintly. "You must have a big family." Miles shook his head. "No, just—" "Big buildings." Her smile faded. "I'm sorry," he shrugged. "Don't be. I chose it, but lately I'm not sure why." They stood in silence. For a moment. The kind of silence that says more than words ever. "Could." Then Miles reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. "I don't want to offend you," he said. "But this might help." She hesitated, shaking her head. "No, I can't." "Please," he said firmly but kindly. "Think of it as Santa's unfinished delivery." She took it slowly, her hands trembling. He smiled, then turned toward the door. As he opened it, she called out, "Sir?" He looked back. "My son said, he thinks Santa's helper will come back next Christmas too." Miles smiled, that real quiet smile again. Maybe he's right. Then he stepped into the cold. That night, Miles returned to his penthouse. He didn't turn on the lights. He just sat by the window again, watching the city glitter below, the same city he once believed he owned. But now, it felt like the city had something to teach him. He pulled Jamie's letter from his pocket and read it again. And as he did, something clicked in his mind. Money had never made him happy. Luxury had never filled the silence. But one small boy's wish, to make his mother smile, had done what all his wealth couldn't. It made him feel. He looked at the red toy car again, sitting on his desk. Then, with a quiet determination, he whispered to himself, "This isn't over." The next morning, Miles made a call. "To the Romano Foundation," he told his assistant. "New directive. We're launching a winter relief fund in Milan. Start with housing support, child education, and small business aid." His assistant stammered, "Sir, that's millions of euros." Miles smiled faintly. "Then let's make it a Merry Christmas." The story of the mysterious donor spread quickly. News outlets called him the Secret Santa of Milan. No one knew who he was, only that every struggling family in the old quarter woke up to food, warmth, and a little hope that winter. And in a tiny apartment on Via della Moscova, a young boy named Jamie sat on the floor beside a glowing heater, holding his red race car, smiling from ear to ear. He didn't know it yet, but his wish had changed a billionaire's heart. Forever. It had been 3 months since that snowy Christmas night in Milan. The city had moved on. New billboards, new deals, new headlines. But not for Miles Romano. Something inside him had changed. Quietly, permanently. Every morning, before diving into meetings or signing contracts, he found himself looking at the small red race car on his desk, Jamie's car. To everyone else, it was just a cheap plastic toy. To Miles, it was a reminder of innocence, of kindness, of the one night he'd felt something real. One cold February morning, his assistant entered with a hesitant look. "Sir, there's a letter addressed to you." No sender's name, just a child's handwriting. Miles frowned slightly, took the envelope, and tore it open carefully. Inside was a note written in shaky pencil. "Dear Mr. Romano, thank you for helping my mom. She found a better job now. I'm feeling a bit sick these days, so I can't go out much, but I keep my red car close to me. When I get better, I want to show you how fast it can go. Jamie." Miles sat back in silence. Sick. The word echoed in his mind. He picked up his phone immediately. "Luca, find out where the Ferraros live. Now, within hours." A black car pulled up outside an old brick apartment complex in northern Milan. Miles stepped out quietly. No bodyguards, no cameras. Just him, holding a small paper bag. The hallway smelled faintly of detergent and old paint. He found the door marked 23. He knocked softly. A moment later, Lena opened the door. Her face brightened in surprise. "Mr. Romano? May I come in?" "Of course." The apartment was small but tidy. A few second-hand decorations. Soft Christmas lights still taped along the window. Jamie sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching a cartoon on an old TV. When he saw Miles, his eyes widened. "Santa's helper!" he shouted, breaking into a smile. Miles chuckled. "That's me." He crouched beside the couch. "You wrote me a letter." Jamie nodded shyly. "Yeah. Mom said maybe you were too busy to read it." "I wasn't," Miles said. "I read every word." He handed the boy the small paper bag. Inside was a brand new remote-controlled red car, sleek, shiny, twice the size of the one before. Jamie's eyes went wide. "For me?" "Of course," Miles said softly. "You promised to show me how fast your car could go. So let's test this one together when you get better." Jamie nodded eagerly. "I'll get better soon, I promise." Lena watched silently from the kitchen. There was gratitude in her eyes, but also something deeper, something unspoken. When Jamie went back to watching TV, she quietly pulled Miles aside. "You didn't have to come," she said softly. "I wanted to." She hesitated. "He's been tired lately. Doctors say it's just a viral thing, but it's been weeks now." Miles's jaw tightened. "Have you taken him to the hospital?" Not yet, she admitted. It's expensive. I'm saving up. Miles didn't hesitate. I'll take care of it. No. Lena, he interrupted gently. Don't say no to help that your son needs. She looked away, eyes glistening. You've already done so much. And I'll keep doing it, he said firmly. Because that boy reminds me of what matters. That evening, they took Jamie to San Donato Children's Hospital. Miles waited in the hallway while the doctors ran tests, the smell of antiseptic mixed with anxiety. Hours passed. Then the doctor returned, face serious but kind. Mr. Romano, Miss Ferraro. It seems Jamie has a mild but persistent infection. Nothing life-threatening, but he'll need treatment and rest. Miles exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. Thank you, doctor, Lena whispered, tears in her eyes. As Jamie slept in the hospital bed, Miles sat by his side, watching the small boy's chest rise and fall. He couldn't remember the last time he'd sat still like this. No phone, no agenda, no clock, just presence. For the first time in his adult life, he realized that giving didn't drain him, it filled him. Over the next few weeks, Miles visited often, sometimes with toys, sometimes with books, sometimes just to talk. Jamie loved asking him questions. Do you drive your own car? No, someone else drives it for me. That's boring, Jamie laughed. Miles grinned. You're not wrong, or do rich people get lonely? Miles hesitated before answering. Sometimes more than anyone else. Jamie tilted his head. Then maybe you need more friends. Like me. That simple line hit Miles harder than any business deal ever could. One afternoon, as Miles prepared to leave, Jamie tugged his sleeve. Promise me something, he said. Anything. When I get better. We race, your car and mine, Miles smiled. Deal, pinky promise, Jamie added, holding out his small hand. Miles chuckled and wrapped his pinky around Jamie's. Pinky promise. That tiny handshake, small, innocent, carried more meaning than all the contracts Miles had ever signed. Outside the hospital, Lena caught up with him. You didn't have to stay that long, she said softly. I wanted to, he replied. She hesitated. You're not what I expected, Miles raised a brow. What did you expect? She smiled faintly. A man who throws money around and disappears. Not someone who brings storybooks and sits by a hospital bed. He shrugged lightly. Maybe I'm changing. Because of a boy you met once? She teased gently. Because of what that boy reminded me, Miles said. That even the smallest kindness can change a life. Sometimes both. Their eyes met. For the first time, there was warmth between them. Fragile, uncertain, but real. Weeks passed. Jamie grew stronger. Doctors smiled. Nurses adored him. And every visit from Miles became a highlight of his day. One sunny afternoon in early March, Jamie was discharged. He came running out of the hospital doors clutching the new race car. Miles, I'm ready for our race. Miles laughed. You sure you can handle the speed? Jamie grinned. Watch me. They raced the cars across the hospital courtyard, red toys zooming over the pavement, laughter echoing against the marble walls. Lena watched from the side. Tears glistening but smiling too. For a moment. Everything was perfect, but perfection rarely lasts long. 2 weeks later, a sudden phone call shattered it all. Lena's voice trembled through the receiver. Mr. Romano, Jamie fainted. We're at the hospital again. They're saying it's more serious this time. Miles froze. I'm on my way. Within minutes, he was speeding through the streets of Milan. Rain fell in sheets, blurring the lights. At the hospital, he found Lena in the corridor, pale, shaking. They said his infection spread, she whispered. They're doing everything they can. Miles's heart sank. He felt helpless, and he hated that feeling. For the first time in years, all his wealth, his power, his influence, meant nothing. He stood by the glass window of the ICU, watching Jamie lie unconscious, surrounded by machines. The red race car sat on the table beside the bed, still, silent, waiting. Miles pressed his hand against the glass, and quietly, under his breath, he whispered, You promised we'd race, kid. You better keep that promise. Days passed. Doctors fought. Lena prayed. Miles barely left the hospital. He spent nights in the hallway, refusing to go home. Assistants brought food he never touched. Every beep of the monitor became the soundtrack of his nights. And then, one morning, a small sound broke the silence. Miles. His head snapped up. Jamie was awake, weak, pale, but smiling. "You didn't leave," Jamie murmured. Miles let out a shaky laugh. "You think I'd miss our race?" Jamie smiled faintly. "When I get better, we race again." Miles squeezed his hand gently. "You got it, champ." For the first time in his life, Miles felt what it truly meant to care, not out of guilt or duty, but out of love. And in that sterile white hospital room, between machines and medicine, a billionaire and a boy built something priceless, a promise, a bond, a story that would soon touch every heart in Milan. Spring had bloomed in Milan. Cafes spilled onto cobblestone streets. The scent of roasted chestnuts drifted through the air. People smiled again. But for Miles Romano, life had slowed down to one heartbeat at a time. Jamie was finally home. After weeks of treatment, his color had returned, his laughter brighter than ever, and every weekend, Miles visited, sometimes with a new toy, sometimes with nothing but time. The boy didn't care what Miles brought, he just cared that he came. One Saturday afternoon, Jamie burst out of the apartment door, waving the red race car. "Miles, you promised a race!" Miles grinned. "I remember." They set up the tiny racetrack on the old apartment balcony. The air smelled like rain and hope. "Ready?" Miles said, holding his remote. Jamie nodded fiercely. "Ready! 3, 2, 1, go!" The cars zoomed across the track, plastic wheels spinning fast. Jamie laughed so hard he almost fell over. Miles slowed down his car just enough for the boy to win. "Ha! Told you!" Jamie shouted, raising his little fists in victory. Miles raised his hands in defeat. "You're the champion," Jamie beamed. "I told Mom rich people can't drive toy cars." Lena laughed from the doorway. "That's not very nice, Jamie." Miles laughed too, eyes warm. "He's not wrong." As the laughter faded, Lena turned to Miles. "I still don't understand why you care so much." "We're strangers." Miles looked at her quietly. "I used to think money could buy peace. But I've never felt more peace than sitting on this floor watching that kid laugh." She smiled softly. "You're not like other rich men." "Maybe because I remember what it's like to have nothing," he said. Lena tilted her head. "You were poor?" "Worse," Miles said. "I was forgotten." There was silence for a moment, a rare, comfortable silence. Then Jamie shouted again, "Rematch!" Miles chuckled. "You got it, champ." That night, when Miles returned home, he found an email waiting. Subject, urgent, corporate restructuring proposal. Inside was a message from his board, a plan to move their new factory to another country, cheaper labor. Higher profit, but thousands of Milan workers would lose their jobs. Miles stared at the numbers. Logic screamed yes, every instinct said no. He looked again at the red race car sitting on his desk, the same one Jamie had given him that night in the snow. And for the first time in years, the billionaire didn't think about gain. He thought about good. He picked up his phone and called his partner. "We're not moving the factory," he said firmly. "Are you serious?" "Miles, we'll lose millions." "Then we lose millions," he interrupted. "But we won't lose our people." There was a pause. His partner sighed. "You've changed, man." Miles smiled faintly. "Maybe that's not a bad thing." Days passed. News spread that Romano Industries had refused to relocate. Employees were stunned. The city praised his decision, but not everyone was happy. Investors threatened to pull funding. Competitors mocked him. His company's shares dropped overnight. Yet, through all the chaos, Miles stayed calm, because every time doubt crept in, he remembered one thing, Jamie's smile. Then came the day that changed everything. Lena called him early one morning. Her voice trembled. "Miles, Jamie's in the hospital again." He froze. "What happened?" "They said his infection came back. It's worse this time." Please, come. He didn't even hang up properly. He just ran. When he arrived, doctors were rushing past. Machines beeped. Nurses moved quickly. Through the glass window, he saw Jamie, pale, smaller than ever, his tiny hands clutching the red car. Lena turned to him, tears spilling. They said his lungs are weak. They're trying to stabilize him. Miles felt his throat tighten. He stepped inside the room quietly and knelt beside the bed. "Hey, champ," he whispered. "You scared me." Jamie opened his eyes weakly. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." Miles forced a smile. "Don't be. You're the bravest kid I know." Jamie's lips curved slightly. "Can we race again? When I get out?" Miles swallowed hard. "You bet," Jamie nodded faintly. "Pinky promise?" Miles wrapped his pinky around his. "Pinky promise." Then the boy smiled and drifted into sleep. Hours passed. Doctors worked tirelessly. Miles and Lena waited in silence. Finally, a doctor came out, face tired but gentle. "He's stable for now," he said. "But we'll need to keep him under observation." "He's a fighter." Lena broke down in relief. Miles closed his eyes, whispering a quiet thank you. That night, Miles went home, but he couldn't sleep. He walked into his office. Lights dim, city glowing beyond the glass, and there, on his desk, he saw it again. The race car, a symbol of something purer than any deal he'd ever made. He opened his laptop and wrote a short letter. "To my employees, this company is not built on profit, it's built on people. Starting this year, Romano Industries will establish a foundation for children battling illness. Every sale, every project, every success will contribute to a cause that matters, because real wealth isn't what we keep, it's what we give." He signed it simply. Miles. Romano. The news hit Milan like wildfire. Headlines called it the Billionaire's Christmas Promise. People across the city started donating. Hospitals received support. Families found hope again. But for Miles, none of that mattered as much as one thing: seeing Jamie recover. 2 weeks later, spring sunlight streamed through the hospital windows. Miles entered with a wide smile and a small box in his hands. "Guess what, champ?" Jamie looked up, eyes brighter. "You brought something?" "Something special," Miles said. He opened the box. Inside was a miniature golden trophy with the words, "Fastest Racer, Jamie Ferraro," engraved on it. Jamie gasped. "Is this for me?" "Only if you're ready for another race." Jamie laughed weakly. "I'll win again." "I know you will." They raced their cars again, this time across the hospital table. Doctors smiled from the doorway. Nurses paused to watch, and for a few minutes, that small hospital room became the happiest place in Milan. Later that evening, Miles walked Lena to the lobby. "You gave him something no medicine could," she said quietly. "What's that?" "Hope," Miles smiled softly. "He gave me the same thing." She looked up at him. "You're not the man you used to be." "No," Miles said. "I'm better." A few months later, summer arrived. The Romano Foundation opened its first children's center, a bright, colorful place filled with laughter, art, and healing. Jamie was the guest of honor. He stood on stage beside Miles, holding his red car proudly. Miles knelt beside him and whispered, "This all started because of you," Jamie giggled. "Because of a race?" Miles smiled. "Because of kindness." Cameras flashed. Applause filled the air. But Miles wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking at the boy who had changed his life. That night, as fireworks painted the Milan sky, Miles looked at Lena and Jamie standing together, bathed in golden light. For the first time, he didn't feel like a billionaire. He felt like something far greater, human. A year passed. Milan sparkled again under the glow of Christmas. Lights. Snowflakes drifted gently over the cathedral square. The city was alive, families shopping, children laughing, carolers singing. But one man stood quietly at the edge of it all, watching in silence. Miles Romano. His face softer now, his heart lighter, and beside him, a small boy wearing a red scarf and a bright smile. "Jamie. Can we go see the tree?" the boy asked eagerly. Miles smiled. Of course we can. They walked through the crowd, hand in hand, their footprints leaving tiny marks in the snow. The giant Christmas tree glittered before them, gold ribbons, red ornaments, and a star shining brighter than ever. Jamie looked up in awe. It's huge, Miles chuckled. Almost as huge as your courage. Jamie grinned. Mum says I got that from you. Miles's voice softened. No, champ, I got it from you. Lena joined them, carrying 2 cups of hot cocoa. She smiled, her eyes glowing with peace. He's been waiting all week for this. I have too, Miles said gently. For a long while they just stood there, 3 souls bound by one winter miracle. Then Jamie tugged at Miles's sleeve. Can I tell you a secret? Of course. I asked Santa to give you something. Miles laughed. Oh yeah? What did you ask for? Jamie leaned closer, whispering, someone to make you smile every day. Miles froze for a second. His throat tightened. He looked at Lena. She smiled, holding Jamie close, and for the first time in years, he realized Santa had already granted that wish. Later that night, Miles drove them home. Snow fell harder now, painting Milan silver and white. As they reached the little apartment building, Jamie suddenly pointed. Look, the lights are still on at the hospital. Miles nodded. That's the Romano Foundation Center, remember? They help kids like you. Jamie smiled proudly. Then, we should go say hi. Lena started to protest. It was late, but Miles nodded. He's right. So they turned the car around and drove to the children's hospital. Inside, the halls were glowing with soft Christmas lights. Dozens of kids sat around a tree, opening gifts. Doctors laughed. Nurses clapped. Miles watched from the doorway, his chest swelling with emotion. A little girl in a pink hat ran up and hugged his leg. Thank you, Mr. Miles. I got a teddy bear. He knelt down, smiling. I'm glad you did. Lena watched him quietly, the man who once hid behind wealth now shining with pure kindness. Then, something beautiful happened. Jamie walked over to the donation table. He placed his red race car, the same one from that snowy night, right on top of the pile. Miles froze. Jamie, what are you doing? Jamie turned, smiling softly. You gave me everything. I want another kid to be happy too. For a moment, Miles couldn't speak, his eyes filled with tears. He crouched beside Jamie, voice trembling. That's the bravest, kindest thing anyone's ever done. Jamie shrugged, innocent. You taught me, remember? Real wealth is what we give. Miles pulled him into a tight hug, unable to hold back his emotion. Even the nurses nearby wiped their eyes. After the ceremony ended, the 3 of them stepped outside again. The city bells chimed midnight. Snowflakes sparkled like diamonds. Lena looked up at the sky and whispered, You know, last year, I prayed for a miracle. Miles looked at her. And? She smiled, eyes glistening. God sent you. He smiled back, gently brushing a snowflake from her hair. Maybe he sent you to me too. Jamie looked between them, giggling. Are you two gonna get married? Lena laughed, hiding her blush. Jamie, Miles grinned. We'll see what Santa thinks. A week later, on Christmas morning, Jamie woke up to the sound of laughter outside. He ran to the window and gasped. Down in the courtyard, Miles stood next to a brand new red bicycle, decorated with ribbons. A card hung from the handlebars. To Jamie, the fastest racer in the world. Jamie shouted in excitement, running downstairs in his pajamas. Miles, you didn't have to. Miles smiled warmly. Hey, you gave your car away. You deserve an upgrade, Jamie beamed. Now I can race for real. Miles crouched down. Just promise me one thing. Never stop being kind, okay? Jamie nodded. Promise. He jumped on the bike and started pedaling around the courtyard, laughter echoing through the cold air. Lena joined Miles, watching her son with tears of joy. "You changed everything," she whispered. Miles shook his head softly. "He changed me." Later that evening, the three of them walked together through the quiet cemetery, the same one where Lena's late husband rested. Jamie placed a small candle beside the grave. "Mom says you're watching us from heaven," he whispered. "We're okay now. We found a friend." Miles stood silently beside them, hands folded, eyes soft. Lena turned to him. "He would have liked you." Miles nodded gently. "Then I'll try to live in a way that honors him." They stood there. For a moment, the city lights in the distance, snow falling softly, the candle flickering beside the grave. And in that stillness, it felt like the past had finally made peace with the present. When they walked back to the car, Jamie was already sleepy. He leaned against Miles's shoulder, eyes heavy. Miles smiled down at him. "Get some rest, champ." "Okay," Jamie mumbled. "Next Christmas. Can we all be together again?" Miles looked at Lena. Their eyes met, full of quiet understanding. He brushed the boy's hair gently. "We will," he whispered. "Every Christmas, from now on." As they drove home, the radio played softly, a choir singing Silent Night. Outside, the city glowed, every window, every street, every heart shining with warmth. And in that moment, the billionaire who once had everything realized something profound. He hadn't found happiness through power or money or fame. He'd found it through love, through giving, through the laughter of a little boy who once waited alone on Christmas Eve.